Hey, Kentucky, this is Mary Jo Perino. Tonight, protesters return to Frankfort under a different set of rules. A Kentucky congressman wants a quick reopening of the economy. And we'll check in with a new LA Ram, Austin McGinnis. All that and more is next on Hey, Kentucky. Welcome to Hey Kentucky with LEX 18 Sports Director Keith Farmer. Hello, Keith, and TGIF.
Yes, it is another end of the week, and I'm glad you said that because I don't know if I realized it was Friday.
It is. Trust me, it's Friday. When you set yourself up at home tomorrow and we don't contact you, you'll know.
Yeah, I'll know. I'll know then.
All right, let's begin with the latest on the pressure being put on Governor Beshear to lift restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. As we mentioned last night, a large group of protesters showed up in Frankfort to disrupt Beshear's daily update this week. Today, protesters were back, but had to adhere to new guidelines announced by the state health commissioner. State police are now providing a drive-in option where participants must stay in their vehicles. Part of the Capitol lawn is also blocked off with caution tape where protesters gathered Wednesday and their chants could be heard during the briefing.
I understand a couple of dozen people wanted to drown us out yesterday, but I think that there are a whole lot of people at home, a whole lot of people out there that wanted the information we were providing yesterday.
Attorney General Daniel Cameron wants the new KSP warnings posted for says the KSP warnings posted for protesters are far too heavy-handed. And Keith, that may be the case, but I just don't think the governor is trying to harm people.
By not allowing them to protest?
No, by not reopening the economy this second.
Right. No, I think you're right. I think he's being very cautious and he's making sure that everything is A-OK and that the scientists, the doctors, and everybody are saying, yes, you can start opening things up.
All right. In Washington, President Trump is calling on both of our senators to help form the national plan to reopen the economy. Trump has appointed Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul to a bipartisan congressional task force that will look at loosening coronavirus restrictions. The pair is among more than a dozen GOP senators appointed to the panel. Meanwhile, Kentucky Congressman James Comer has weighed in on Kentucky's reopening discussion. Yesterday, the 1st District Republican said we should be among the states ready to open for business in the next couple of weeks, saying people can wear masks and take other precautions. Keith, I am going to wait and not hear from the legislators on this one. I'm going to wait for, as you just mentioned, the doctors and the scientists.
Yeah, I do agree with one thing he says. I think we're going to be ahead of some other states in the chance that we have because of how far ahead we were in closing things down and making sure we were distancing and all of that. So I do agree with him there, but I'm with you. I'm like, let's just wait and make sure that everyone says this isn't all clear and we're not going to have, something resurface again.
Right. We see these numbers and think, well, they're kind of low compared to other places. But it's because we've been staying in our homes that it's working.
Yes, exactly.
All right, this week brought a couple of stark reminders that the coronavirus does not practice age discrimination. Yesterday, we learned that a 10-day-old child in Lincoln County tested positive. And early CDC data suggests that Kentucky's millennials may not be as invincible as once thought. A recent report shows the Bluegrass State has the highest rate of millennials with underlying health conditions. And nationwide, younger adults have accounted for nearly 30% of COVID-19 cases, 20% of related hospitalizations, and between 2 and 4% have been admitted to the ICU for severe symptoms. Keith, you never know what is going on in someone else's immune system to know that, yes, they're safe because they're young.
And what circle they're in, and with them being younger. And then the one thing that concerns me, we're talking about maybe possibly opening up businesses again, and millennials are going to make up a big part of that. And so, yeah, you've got to know that no matter what your age is, you've got to listen to everything that's being said.
Gosh, everything always gets blamed on the millennials, doesn't it? Unbelievable. A few weeks back, we talked about a graphic that detailed Kentucky's reaction to the pandemic, comparing it with Tennessee's. The statistics ended up going viral, and it seemed to show that leaders in the Bluegrass were ahead of the curve versus our neighbors to the south. But since that time, other experts have weighed in to say that such comparisons are more complicated than it appears. And in fact, the volunteer state has become a leader in testing its population more broadly, which could play a role in its higher share of confirmed cases. Kentucky has fewer confirmed cases in total and on a per capita basis, but Tennessee has tested at nearly double the rate. Differences in the political makeup of the two states have contributed to that rivalry on social media. And Keith, when we're talking about reopening, this is one of those things. One of the benchmarks is how much testing do you have? And if Kentucky still doesn't have this testing, then maybe Tennessee actually opens up before we do.
Yeah, very true. And who would have thought that just a couple of weeks ago? But really, when you're talking about all these, we love a good rivalry, especially when it comes between Kentucky and Tennessee. But it's all semantics because we're talking about deaths out there, and the states have each had over 110 deaths to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Turning to Kentucky basketball now. Coach Cal has picked himself up another transfer. Jacob Toppin, the brother of former Dayton superstar and National Player of the Year Obi Toppin, has announced his commitment to Kentucky, choosing the Cats over Oregon and Iowa State. The 6'8", 190-pound forward is originally from Brooklyn. As a freshman at Rhode Island, he averaged about 6 points and 4 rebounds in 30 games played, including 3 starts. The Kentucky basketball program compares Toppin to former UK forward Kevin Knox. Keith, this news just popped up out of nowhere to me yesterday.
Yeah, and very quickly. It's like one day all of a sudden you see he's got a list that includes Kentucky. Next day he's coming to Kentucky. And yeah, it happened fast. And I think it's interesting because Coach Cal's taking the one and dones. He's now starting to get grad transfers. And now he's got a transfer that's going to play in this system. And he'll have 3 more years of eligibility remaining. And he looks like he's got a lot of upside.
And he's going to be sitting out a year. But I wonder if Cal is maybe changing a little bit of his style based on maybe the G League coming in and recruiting some of those top players away.
Yeah, not only that, but the chance that soon you're going to be able to transfer one time. This is a little preview of how that could happen.
Yep. All right, the complicated history of former UK football star Lynn Bowden is detailed in a new piece on NFL.com. Big Blue Nation has probably heard once or twice about his early tattoo addiction, but you probably don't know about the time that Bowden saw someone shot to death at a youth football game in his hometown of Youngstown. Shortly after that experience, the 10-year-old Bowden got his first gun and would go on to witness several more murders. His life changed for the better as he prepared to depart for Lexington. The birth of his son, Lynn III, forced Bowden to grow up overnight. Instead of yearning for the streets, he lived, quote, the married life in college. And by the time his mythic career ended here, there were no concerns about his past. Keith, he's a remarkable young man who has probably been through more than we could even imagine.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you can only imagine how his life could have turned out tragically different than it has. Not only that, you mentioned the turnaround in him, having been around him in those years that he was here at Kentucky. I mean, he went overnight from the time his son was born to just a different person, a different, more focused player. And it was a lot of fun to see happen.
Yeah, it was a metamorphosis. It was really awesome to watch. All right, now on Hey Kentucky, in case you missed it, a review of recent headlines. Both sides involved in the trial of a teen accused of the deadly shooting at the Marshall County High School agree it should be delayed due to the pandemic. Gabe Parker's trial was set to begin in Christian County on June 1st, but a hearing is set for later this month to determine a new date. The COVID-19 relief bill will bring a windfall for Kentucky's troubled airports. 55 facilities will get a share of more than $77 million from the Airport Improvement Fund. And the state Senate confirmed nearly all of Governor Beshear's appointments to the Kentucky Board of Education on Wednesday, with only Chairman David Karam's nomination failing. Up next on Hey Kentucky, earlier this week we talked about his new NFL contract. Now former UK kicker Austin McGinnis talks to Charlie Walter of LAX 18 Sports about his new gig with the LA Rams. Stay with us.